What's up? I'm Cody Tilley, and I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us along this adventure. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and follow us on all social media platforms. Merchandise is available at talkswithtilly.square.site. Links available in the bios. What's up, fam? We are back again for another week, and I am coming to you from Cowboy Camp 2022. I've got two of my great friends with me, Mr. Jeff Bishop and Mr. Nick Swinford. How are y'all?
They're fantastic.
They're both looking over here like a deer in headlights.
So who's going first?
Yeah. Hey, listen, it's all good. Well, camp's been good so far.
Absolutely.
I would say
It's been a blast.
Nick is the camp pastor for the week. I mean, doing an amazing job. A lot of you may actually know Nick. I mean, there is some of the Oklahoma crew that actually listens.
Bless their heart. They're probably sick of listening to me.
You got a message for them right now. You got anything to say to your Oklahoma?
To my Oklahoma people, my camp people.
Okay. So let me go and say this. Nick ran Camp Wow. That's correct? You were over like the Oklahoma camp for a couple years.
Yeah, 6 years. Yeah, I was
Camp director.
Started in 15, I think.
Hey, that was the year I started camp here. 15.
Really?
Yeah, I was. And then Mr. Jeff is. Oh, well, are you executive
Assistant director?
Okay, assistant director of the AFCC, and you oversee all the cowboy camps, of course.
Yes,
we've got to know each other over the last couple of years, and some things like that made a pretty good relationship.
Yeah, I think you've grown up a lot. I mean, I've grown up a lot.
No, I've grown up a lot.
Yes, sir, you have.
When I walked into camps, so 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was a little cocky team roper that thought I knew it all. And
was that this camp?
Yeah, I think so.
That's what I was thinking. This was the first camp you came to.
It was.
You're talking about location?
Location.
Yes.
Argus.
It was crazy. I walked in here. The only reason I showed up to this camp was because they told me I could rope goats all week. And I thought, okay, that's great. I mean, and I'm telling you right now, I was a cocky. I'd won a truck a year before that. I'd just come from Ranger from college out there. And I thought, what in the heck am I doing going to a camp? But I'm just going to rope goats. And I thought my crap didn't stink. And God humbled me.
Now, was that the year that we did the truck roping where
yes,
we promoted it and all that stuff? And I bought the little trucks from Tractor Supply and made the flyer. That's what I was thinking.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's back when we used to have jackpot dummy ropings.
Oh yeah.
And, I mean, for like $1 a run in the hall out there.
Nick said something about the ping pong table being broke in that building where the drag steer roping is.
Oh yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it got broke when y'all were up here. It's probably been there since then.
Oh, no joke.
Yeah, it didn't.
You're familiar with that ping pong table.
That ping pong table has a history.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you, but it's crazy to think where we've come from. But I guess if I just really think about it, I mean, I've got you two on the same podcast, and we're talking a lot about camps and things like here. So there's probably a lot of people listening right now who are early in their walk. They maybe have never been to a camp. They've never but they're getting ready and they say, man, I've always wanted to serve at a camp, or I've always wanted to even taking my next step, really just the next step's the only word I can use in their ministry walk. Maybe they've never done anything in ministry. They've never served in any way, shape, or form. And they've never even thought about serving at a camp. What would you say, and this conversation will probably go 14 different ways, but what would you say to somebody who is young? I mean, you've done more than just camps, of course, Nick. You were the youth pastor at Cross Brand in Tyler for a while as well. What would you just say to those people who are wanting to do more in their walk, but they're not really sure what to do? They're like, hey, I love Jesus, but I never saw I would never see myself actually doing more. What would you say to those people, either as a sense of encouragement or as a wake up call? Let me say that.
Yeah, sure. So really, camp is, first of all, it would be the greatest experience of your life.
Right.
Statistics show that you can do more at a 5-day camp than you can on a whole year of Wednesday nights meeting with a kid.
Right.
There's something about taking a kid out of their element and putting them somewhere new. And that's why I love camp so much. And I've had this conversation with several people before that they want to jump in, they want to do something more, but they don't know what to do. And honestly, like, I'm not just saying this because I'm biased and I've been in it most of my life, but camp's a great spot to do that
Right.
because it's fun, but it is also full of the Holy Spirit. Like, and then camp is prayed about from when camp is right now. We're already praying for camp 2023, right? Like, so it's being vetted through, and we're already thinking about what does 2023 look like. And really, it's a great entry point for anybody to come in, because they have that opportunity to serve.
Right.
But it's not like this. Camp is fun.
Right.
It's not like this, oh, I got to go work my butt off and I got to go cook something in a kitchen somewhere for a church. No, that's not. Camp is a lot of fun. And so when you invite somebody into that space where they're serving and getting to have fun, what an opportunity it looks like for them to serve the Lord.
Of course.
And so it's hard to take off time of work, but I promise you it's worth the time you miss at work to go to camp and serve.
Right.
That's how I would encourage people, is just try it.
Of course.
So
and Mr.
Yeah,
Jeff,
I would add to that too. Of course, first time I met Nick was at a camp. He was part of the worship lead, worship team that came. But camp is yes, it's fun. It is about relationship. We were talking about relationship earlier, and that's how you and I met. So it's not just the relationship with the Lord, even though that's the focus, that's the primary, is to introduce the gospel to people, but also to disciple others. But it's about lifelong relationships. And as I look back over, this is my 18th year of doing cowboy camps.
You're telling your age now.
I'm old. I'm old enough to be your dad for sure. Pretty close. I'm old enough to be your dad also.
Yeah, you are. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks. I'm the old guy. So 18 years. Yeah, y'all are making me get off track. So
relationships.
Relationships. But looking back, and Nick and I had this conversation earlier today, it's kind of crazy to see the couples that are now serving in churches, that are serving in camps, that met at camp. And my son is one of them. My son and daughter-in-law, Cody and Kelly, they met through the camp process. There's a bunch of other couples, but it even goes beyond the boy-girl relationships. It's lifelong friends that you build. That, to me, that's what sets Cal Camp apart from a lot of camps, is we build relationships as staff. We're involved in each other's lives as families. I try to be pops to his kids. Right. I've been around since 3 of them were born.
Yeah.
I think Lawson was the only one.
Yeah, he was still young. He was a year old when we came back in.
Yeah, was little. So, but it's about relationships. And, if you really dig deep in the Word, what is it about being a Christ follower? Ultimately, it's having a relationship with the Lord, but it's surrounding yourself with other believers as well, to encourage, to motivate, to hold you accountable. And just where I'm at in my walk today and in my ministry, Jeremy and I pastor Cowboy Church in Bandera, Texas. And for the last several months, probably almost a half a year now, we've been on this deal about the remnant. And God is raising up a remnant. God has always had a remnant. And I believe today God is raising up a remnant. And it's so cool to be a part of camps, because that camp is a core part of the remnant, not just of the church with a big C, but also church with a little c, being the different churches that come to camp. It's not just cowboy churches that come to these camps. We have other churches that come. So it's cool to build a relationship with them as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
And just for those listening, as the AFCC, as the American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches, right now, as of right now in 2022, there's 3 camps. There's an Oklahoma camp, which is in where's that at in Oklahoma?
There's actually 7 camps at 3 locations.
Okay, 7.
So the one in Oklahoma, what you were talking about earlier, where Nick worked for a while, is at Camp Walk on Water, Camp Wow. There's 2 teen camps, a preteen camp there. Of course, we have a teen camp and a preteen here in Alabama. This year, we're at Hargis Christian Center. And then starting Saturday will be a preteen camp and a teen camp at Looters, Texas, at Big Country.
Right.
So,
so so just so everybody knows, that's kind of where we're at, what we're talking about, kind of where these things are, and we encourage you to get involved because, and like I was just sitting there thinking as both of you were speaking, of how spot on I mean that is, because you don't realize what one event, what reaching out, what doing one thing one time where God is doing something, and you say, okay, hey, I'll do this, and God, I'm not gonna say he tricks you, but God puts something in there that for you're going for a different purpose. You're like, oh, I mean, we could tell story on story of sponsors that had life change, and they just went because they were they were a warm body that got, and then they show up and life change happens for them. And I mean, essentially, without just, I mean, going too far into my story, but that's essentially what happened to me. As we were talking about earlier, I showed up to rope goats, and God got a hold of my heart and said, hey, you're supposed to do something more. And I left here and I had 5 churches I was going to go speak at. I gave my testimony 5 places. A stuttering kid, didn't know what I was doing, and I still didn't really know exactly. And God was still doing a lot of work on my life, and still is, because I still didn't get a lot of what it meant to be a Christ. I mean, I did understand what it meant to be a Christ follower, but I was still in a very early process of sanctification. And I say early, but God was really doing a work in my life. But it was here at this place, and this place holds a special place in my heart for that. But I believe it's these events, these things, these instances where God uses these things that we would never even think about to become a huge ordeal, a huge life change, because it was from that point forward I made relationships here, like those 5 churches I said. There was one of them, the very last church I spoke at was in Rafter Cross in Williston, Florida. The very next year I go back there again, and I wind up moving there for a year. Okay, as an intern, all because of one camp. And now I've been doing ministry for the last, I've been full time for the last couple of years, and part time. I've been in a ministry role for the last 4 or 5 years now. And it changed my life all because I showed up to a camp. So we say all that, and camp's fun and good, but I guess my next question to each of you is, what do you say to that person who, okay, maybe camp's not on the radar for them, but they're starting their Christian, or let's not even say starting, they're just wanting to, like, their Christian walk feels numb. Their Christian walk feels like it's almost plateaued, and to me, which I say this about churches, a church is never plateaued. It's either incline or decline. What do you say to that person right now who is just feels like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know where my next, because I know I've been there. And I would think probably, because we all get there at probably some point, is you're like, okay, God, what are you doing now? Like, what is my next step? Of course we know baptism and things like that, but once you get past baptism, a lot of people start to really question. They're like, man, I know I'm supposed to do more, but I really don't know what, or I feel like I'm just, like I said, I'm at that plateau. So what would be your advice to that young Christian, or not even young Christian? They could be an older Christian. They could have been a Christian for 20 years. What would you say to that person?
You want to go first?
Man, absolutely. Brandon Henderson was our speaker at week 1 at the Oklahoma team camp, and Brandon was in Exodus 14, in a couple of verses that he brought out. And of course, just a quick background: Exodus 14 is when the Israelites Moses has led them out of Egypt, and Pharaoh is surrounding them. They're at the shore of the Red Sea, and man, they're crying out, we why'd you bring us out here? You bring us out here to die to these Egyptians. And Moses, the first thing he tells the people is, he says, be still, be calm, because God's about to do something great. Right. But then the Lord turns to Moses, and he speaks to Moses, and he says, Moses, tell these people to get moving. Man, those words are so profound, because so often in life we're trying to figure out what it is God's calling us to do, what we're supposed to do, when really God's given everyone a gift and a talent. He's given people an ability. It's just get moving. Use the gifts and the talents God has given you and get moving. If that's to work with students at camp, get moving. Right. If it's to, fill the third seat on the 5th row in the center section at your church and worship the Lord, grow in the Lord, set your butt in that seat. You know, if
Right.
it's to serve in the children's ministry, arena ministry, whatever. Man, there's so many different opportunities out there to share the gospel, and people are waiting for this miraculous sign, this parting of the water,
Right.
so to speak, when really that sign is God's already given you those abilities. It's just submitting to him and humbling yourself and saying, God, I don't really have this figured out, you know, but
Right.
I'm just going to move. I'm going to get moving.
I agree.
Yeah, that's right. And I talked about this 2 nights ago, just like Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus had to have a position change. He literally physically climbed up in a tree to experience Jesus. He had to move, like exactly what
That's
you're saying.
exactly right.
He had to climb up in the tree to experience this man Jesus, because he'd heard about all these cool things that he'd done. But it wasn't until Zacchaeus moved and took the step that he experienced Jesus. And then you know the rest of the story. Jesus invites himself over to Zacchaeus' house, and he says there's salvation, right? And all this stuff. And I would completely agree, because sometimes moving is exactly what you just said. It's sitting in the 3rd row, 2nd seat or whatever,
Yeah.
and just worshiping the Lord, because often there's sometimes that he calls us to a season of waiting.
Yeah.
And that is movement. But
That is movement.
because we are people that have to do something, though, we claim that as laziness or whatever you want to
Yeah, so-
cultivate
That's right.
around
So,
that.
so I totally want to stop you right there, because that's a huge deal in our generation for especially, I guarantee you, for someone listening right now, they're in a season of waiting,
Uh-huh.
you know, and they probably, I mean, because I've been there, and I would ask that same question myself. Why am I right here? Why is something bigger not happening? Why is there things not moving the way? So let's elaborate just a little bit on that waiting. What do you believe that waiting looks like, or not only what does it look like? Why would God call us to wait? What does it look like? I mean, just the whole, like, I mean, let's just break it. Let's just hit it and break it.
I want to jump in
Go.
on that, because something I learned from Nick. I mean, God speaks through so many different people through his word.
Right.
And I'll never forget it. It's probably, I'm going to say 4 years ago. Nick was speaking to his staff, the camp staff that was there. And it was really in one of your prayers where he ended that prayer with, God, we trust you.
Right.
And he just paused. I mean, it was this dead silent Holy Spirit moment of, God, we trust you. So to me, to answer your question, that, you know, we read that verse, be still, you know, and wait
Right.
on the Lord, whatever. Man, I don't think being still and waiting on the Lord all the time is necessarily being idle.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
coming to a point of saying, God, I trust you.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
We have equated the spiritual stillness to a physical stillness.
that's
Oh,
exactly
wow.
right.
Yeah.
That's good.
exactly
That's
right.
good. That's really
Yeah.
good.
And so along those lines, is the waiting season is hard, because we've been taught, especially in our culture, we've been taught that if you're stagnant or you're not doing anything, you're lazy.
Right.
And so what I would just encourage and tell you this too, is that oftentimes when we view ourselves as being lazy, what we see is God not moving on our time structure.
Mm,
Right.
And so
absolutely.
in a waiting season, it's God's time structure. It's not mine.
Right.
And I fight that so bad. I remember moving to Oklahoma, and I moved my family into this little single wide 2-bedroom house. I have 3 kids. It's me and my wife. And it's like, we got there and it felt so good. Right. But then you look up and go, God, what are you doing?
Right.
Oh crap. What's this?
This doesn't make sense. And so you're in this waiting season, and we go through the first season of camp, and it's busy, and you don't even think about how you're still in the waiting season because you're doing something. Your hands aren't idle anymore. And then we come out on the other side and we move to another camp location to build another camp. And I spent a lot of times on a tractor cleaning up a piece of property by myself for weeks on end. And I would tell you that was a waiting season for me. And I would get really frustrated with God because there was no movement that I could physically see.
Mm.
But when I moved away from camp and moved back to Tyler, because that was part of God's story, and I look back on that time, that year and a half, almost 2 years that I was in Oklahoma, it wasn't for anybody else, but for my growth.
Wow.
And so sometimes in a waiting season, we're looking for fruit on the outside when really it's fruit on the inside that's probably happening.
Right. And just to really piggyback off both of what you said, you know, I heard this one time, and I probably even mentioned this on the podcast before, that you know, I believe when I was in Virginia at Liberty, I went to I would just pop in random churches, and I heard a guy talk about, you know, what about when you go to a restaurant? What do you call the person who serves you? Well, a waiter.
Uh-huh.
Waiting doesn't mean that you're just doing nothing.
Right.
It means that you're preparing for what is to come.
Right.
I mean, you're getting ready and preparing for whatever it is that it may be. It may not be necessarily just things happening the way, like you said, happening like you think they, but your job, or the job of the waiter, is to prepare the food to be delivered to whatever it is.
Yeah.
To bring it out to your table. And when God's doing something, God is got you in this season of waiting. Okay, maybe you're waiting on marriage, like waiting for God to send that person in your life. Maybe you're waiting for God to do open a different job opportunity. You know that the place that you are right now is not exactly where you're supposed to spend forever, and you're waiting God for the position to open, or maybe or whatever it is, and you're saying, God, like, I'm praying and I'm asking you for, but you're not moving right now. And so it's very easy to become, like you said, like, God, like, what are you doing? And and I'll tell you right now, I'm guilty of it. Sometimes it's very easy to get down, and you say, God, sure. I'm like, man, God, I've been doing all this, and I'm guilty of this 100% of, God, I've been doing all this, and I've been praying, and I've been asking, and I've been seeking your face, and I don't feel like you're moving. I don't feel like you're turning this situation into anything, and you're just like, so God, why? And I think we get to this point, and God's like, hold on, no, you're prepared. Like, I'm preparing you to do something else, and you still need to just keep doing what you're doing. You keep serving me. I'm still using you as a vessel, and you don't even realize it, to prepare other things. But you're not ready to you're not ready for that promotion just yet. You're not ready for that relationship just yet. You got time to spend right here, because guess what? When you're serving those trays and when you're walking back and forth to the kitchen back, you've got time that you need to see some stuff. You need to deal with some people that you ain't ready to deal with, because when they snap off at you at your table because the cook took a little bit longer, you got to learn how those things happen. Yeah. And I don't know, just thinking about that, like, really just, and like God has worked on me a lot through that, because I've asked him why a whole lot of times.
Sure.
But,
yeah, some of the greatest men in the Bible have asked why. Of course, the greatest why ever asked, when Jesus is hanging there, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? So, I mean, yeah, it's natural for us to ask why, because we're created in the image of Christ. The image of the Lord.
And that's good.
It's natural for us to ask why.
That's good.
I ask why all the time, especially working with the camp staff. Why? Why'd you do that?
And Nick, I'm pretty sure I heard you hit on this one time a couple of years ago, but I believe we've created this, this stigma, or this thing that it's bad to ask God why, like that it's that we are doing something wrong if we say, God, why? Yeah. And I, like I said, I heard you hit on, so I just want to kind of throw it to you, and it's like, I mean, that, hey, it's okay. Like, it's okay to come to God and say, hey, God, why?
Yeah. So I got kids, and I love my kids, and in the stage of about 3 years old, they start asking the question why all the time. It's like, why? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And man, I always want that space for my kids to be safe to ask why. Right. And then I want the opportunity to love them well and tell them why. Right. Does that make sense?
Of course.
And so now I see it from a different perspective, because if God is really my father, which I believe 100% he is, and I had a good earthly father, still have a good earthly father, but God is it. He's the man. And so I think it's so okay to ask why, because he is willing to tell you why. But then this is something I also told my kids as a dad is if you're going to ask me a question, you have to be prepared for the answer.
Ooh,
And
that's
so
good.
oftentimes when we ask God why, we're not prepared for the answer. So we will shy away from it or say things like, well, I can't ask God why because he's God. No, that's not the truth. He's your father.
Right.
And so you totally can ask him why, but you also on the other side have to be ready for the answer he's going to give you.
Yeah, and sometimes that's no.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hate it when that
I'm
happens.
so glad it's no sometimes.
Yeah,
I mean,
me
I
too.
hate it, but I'm
I
so
hate
glad.
it, but it's like, thank you, Lord.
You know,
Yeah.
that and that even breaks into another and you know, a lot of the times we bring stuff to God, and when God doesn't answer the way we want him to, when the answer to the why is different than what we say, we just say, oh well, God's not speaking.
Yeah.
Or God's just leaving. You know what I mean?
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think, Mr. Jeff? I mean,
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely, man. Of course, I mean, in my own life, I've experienced that. What's the old cliche is you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
yeah, of course.
But I mean, that's the reality is I think the reason we ask why is because things don't happen our way or happen on our time schedule.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're all struggle with that.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to those two things. First of all, God wants an intimate relationship with us.
Right.
It's we've watered that down
Mm.
where God doesn't want to just be sitting on a throne and us be underneath his feet. He desires a relationship. If you go back to Genesis, what transpired in the very beginning in Genesis? It said God walked among them.
Mm.
God walked with Adam and Eve. How cool would that be to have God walking? But in reality, that kind of freaks us out. It's like, whew, man, I don't know that I want God walking with me because he's going to see who I really am.
Right.
But that's what he desires is that intimate relationship with us, that one-on-one thing. But that has to come with trust. It has to come with fully trusting what he says and saying, man, when he says no, we respect that.
Okay. Yeah, we say okay. And
I love what one of our camp pastors, he said, it's not about me, it's all about him.
Right.
And the students that year at preteen camp, man, they were all pointing, it's not about me, it's all about him. But in reality, that is so simple words. But if we really lived life that way, it would change the dynamics of everything we want to do. It would change our hobbies. It would change our desires as far as serving in the church, of witnessing, sharing the gospel with people, just being real that's what God wants. He created us uniquely. He wants us to be who we are in how he created us.
You're right.
And be real.
Yeah. And I think that just hits a huge thing. I mean, when you realize God already knows everything,
absolutely.
When you come to the spot and you're like, okay, God, like you see it anyway, and I'm not even gonna try to hide.
you get real honest.
Yeah, you get real honest. You're like, you're like, all right, God, like I'm gonna quit trying to act like you didn't know what, like that. This like, I think the best one of the best things I ever heard was nothing ever surprises God. Like, yeah, I mean but going back to what you said of that, the intimate relationship, and I think this is where God has moved my heart in the last couple of years of everything, both spiritual and physically, emotionally, is based on relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely.
The relationships you make and how you treat other people. I mean, there's a reason in Matthew 22 when he says, "Hey, love God first, and then love your neighbor." Like, and then he doesn't say anything. Like he leaves it at that. He's love your God, love God, love your neighbor. And I think there's a very big reason that everybody else is we're trying to figure out all these other like it's a magic formula. It's like, no, and I will tell you this. Loving people gets hard.
Amen.
Well, and I just think I love that you said that it's a magic formula. Well, the reason we make it a magic formula is so it can fit our agenda.
That's exactly
That's
right.
good.
And so I'm just sitting here like full circle of what you just said a while ago is like, back to the serving to the people that are listening to this podcast. What do I need to do next? It's why you're trying to make God fit your agenda, and God doesn't fit our agenda. We fit into his. And so what I just love that you brought that back full circle because it is us just it's not about me, because when we start making life not about me and about him, it changes everything you said, our hobbies. It changes the way we serve. We won't just sit on the pew, which sitting on the pew is great. There's growth there. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it'll push us into camps. It'll push us into working in the kitchen. It'll push us into tearing down the chairs and setting the chairs back, or whatever that looks like.
And
what it does is changes our heart posture.
That's a good way of saying it.
Your heart posture, because now it's no longer about you, it's about being obedient. But then even again, back full circle, it's getting moving,
right? It's so crazy just sitting here. I mean, just this whole deal coming back all the way around, because when you say that, sitting there and it creates something, you have to be crazy to think that God won't put an opportunity for another relationship in your life just by sitting, like, okay, maybe you help pick up chairs after church one Sunday or whatever it is, and you build this one relationship, and then that relationship leads to another relationship, and guess what, before long then you're going to camp, and then this is happening, and God's sitting here thinking, man, or not, God's sitting here just going, hey, this is how this is going to work out, and you have no idea, but it's simply by you waiting and you going and you sitting there. And I'm not telling you that okay, like, just go sit at church on Sunday if God's telling you to do more in your heart. That's not what I'm saying. But making the effort of, hey, if God's guided you there and he's not, and there's not something that there's really get my words together. When just because God's not doing this big parting of the Red Sea right now, and you're in this season of your life where God's moving in a different way than what you think he is, don't think that he's not fixing to do something big, and that he's not already doing something big. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, we'll go to our camp verse, and I mean, I'm gonna kind of hit this Sunday night. It blew my mind when I'll be honest with you, I thought the camp verses were 18 and 19. So I've been studying, forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Do you not already see it? Yeah. And I asked myself, and it goes on to say, I'll make ways in the wilderness. But I asked myself, I was like, God, why would you put that? Why would you put that right before you said, see, I'm doing a new thing? And I honestly believe this with all my heart, is we get so focused on these, we get so focused on the past, and then we don't see what he's already doing. He's already started this new work. He's already started doing new things. He's already started in all these things. And I believe that's what he was telling Israel at the time in Babylon. He's like, hey, look, I'm doing something new. But you don't see it because you're so focused on looking behind you.
Yeah. Right.
That you're missing this.
Well, I think that's what the Apostle Paul was talking about when he said, forgetting what lies behind and striving for what's ahead.
Of course.
It's a repeat of Isaiah 43. He's teaching Isaiah 43.
Yeah.
Is what he's doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy that this whole thing has been brought back full circle of that. And I guess we can even go back to this, that maybe somebody listen, like, can I give you this promise right now? If you're sitting there, maybe you're driving down the road, maybe you're working, maybe you're cutting the grass, I don't know. And you're wondering what God's doing. Maybe God is doing something new in your life, and you just don't see it.
Man, Cody, when you asked that question, I just started thinking back over the last years of camp, because there have been a lot of people, and honestly, you were one of those people. I want to get involved in camp, and right. Now my question or my response to that is not an answer; it's a question. What do you want to do?
Right.
So when if the people that are listening, if they're struggling, they say, man, I don't know what to do. My question to those folks, to all of us, is, what do you want to do?
It's good.
What is it you want to do? And then bathe that in prayer.
Yeah, because it might not land you at camp, right? It
may not.
It might land you in the break room at your office on Tuesday.
That's exactly right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Yeah.
What do you want to? Because people aren't called to camp. People aren't called. Some people don't have a passion to watch 200 teenagers jump up and down for Christ, or see a crowd full. I mean, at Oklahoma camp,
get shot with one of those silly guns.
Yeah, I mean, people don't
Right.
like to have fun, and that's okay. I mean, that's not for everybody, but maybe it's
no. It takes a warped person to find enjoyment.
Right.
Who likes fun? Who likes fun?
Fun? We don't have fun here.
But I think it goes beyond the serving of the church, because like what you said, what do you want to do? Well, if you want to be a CPA, or if you want to be whatever, like I have this conversation with students that I've discipled that have gone through the Wrangler program, and now they're leading camps. Like
Right.
I've had this conversation with them. If it's not camp, that's fine, but wherever you are, God's planted your feet there for a reason.
Amen.
And so
Absolutely.
that's movement. That's growth, and it all comes back to that.
That's good. All right, I got one final thing as we kind of wrap up, just to leave the people, and I ask pretty much everybody that comes on my show this: if you've got one thing that you just wish you could tell everybody in the world, like you meet one person, you got one statement to them. It doesn't have to be one line necessarily, but you got one statement to them. What are you telling them?
That's easy for me. My one statement: trust in the Lord with all your heart and quit depending on your own understanding of life.
Amen.
Yeah,
Jeff translation, by the way.
Jeff translation. That was straight out of
Jeff's opinion.
Jeff Living translation.
Absolutely.
the JLT.
The
JLT. JCB.
Man, something that's really been on my heart lately is that, and it's kind of what we talked about here, and I don't know that I'm going to say it well, and it's something that God's really showed me, is that, and this is a quote, and I'm not going to say it right, but I'm going to say it. Once a man realizes that he'll never sit under the shade of the trees he's planted, he's understood the purpose of life.
Oh wow.
And
That's good.
all of that coming back to what we talked about today, and really is like, we expect God to show up in certain ways, but it's going to be what we didn't expect, but we won't be disappointed.
Amen.
That's so huge, is when God shows up in our lives, is like he's going to show up in ways we don't expect, but you won't be disappointed.
Man, that's so
Man,
good.
that's good. So his is deep. I'm going to give you my quote from the famous Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss. I love
Dr.
it.
Seuss quote, man, it is truer than true. There is nobody more youer than you.
Oh, I like that.
That's
too.
good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's not a translation or any. That's not out of the Bible. That is straight up Dr. Seuss translation.
Good old Dr.
But
Seuss.
Good old Dr. Seuss.
That's good. Well, guys, man, I've enjoyed it. It's been good.
Yeah, it's
This
really
is
good.
fun, dude.
It's been good. This is what I love. I mean, and all this started from a relationship. All this started because one day I met Jeff, and Jeff,
Some goofy sucker wanted to rope goats. at
yeah,
camp.
some guy. I wanted to
Jacked
rope
up
goats,
the whole camps for years.
and somebody said, hey, come meet this guy that runs the camps. And I come met you one time, and probably didn't say a few things that year. And then all of a sudden I get out there and I meet Nick at I think it was because I was helping some because Emma Grace was coming out there to those whatever, and one relationship leads to another, and now we're sitting here in 2022 doing a podcast in the middle of Hargis Retreat and the Christian camp, and man, this is awesome. Well,
God is always doing something new.
something new. Guys, I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being on with me and just having conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody.
Hey guys, I'm so glad you've joined us for today. I do encourage you that if you haven't already to go share this, like this, get it out there to maybe somebody you know needs it. Somebody's in a waiting season. Somebody that is just struggling, and you say, "Man, I could really use it." Man, send it to them. And of course, as always, you can hit me up on Instagram, social media, Facebook, all that good stuff. And if there's anything I can do for you, don't be scared to reach out to me. I'd love to pray for you. And also you can go to the website for merchandise or booking events, anything like that. But I love y'all. Y'all have a great week. I pray this touches your heart in some way, shape, or form, and that this helps you get through your week. Y'all have a great week. I love you. I'm out.